Why LeBron James is the GOAT. It's very stats heavy, confrontational, aims to just end the MJ debate with seven distinct points.
Yeah, and you can see the homework right away. I mean, the stats are undeniable. You got 40,000 points, the whole 10K, 10K, 10K club, 20 all NBA nods. It's a really strong statistical foundation to build on.
Absolutely. The data's there, no question. The author has the ammo. But the way it's delivered, that's where we see the first, let's say, opportunity. It's about managing rhetorical fatigue.
Right, because the prompt, or the intention behind it, seems to push for high engagement, maybe even confrontation. It mentions repeating why LeBron James is the GOAT something like 42 times.
Exactly. And uses some intense language, like throne room massacre and rising venom.
Hmm,
And so the weakness, as we see it, is that this relentless repetition, hammered home like that, could actually dilute the power of those amazing facts.
it starts to overshadow the evidence itself.
Precisely. You've got these incredible stats, 22 seasons of dominance, the playoff numbers, but the listener might just start tuning out the phrase, you know?
Hmm.
It could backfire and alienate people who might otherwise be persuaded by the sheer logic of the data.
Okay, I get that. It's like hitting someone over the head with the conclusion instead of leading them there. But given the intended aggressive style, do we suggest cutting the repetition entirely or just dialing it back, managing it?
Good question. Our suggestion leans towards variation, injecting rhetorical variety. The core argument is so strong, the stats are so powerful, that the phrase, why LeBron James is the GOAT, can work better as like a structural signpost,
Okay.
not a constant drumbeat. You vary the language you use to wrap up sections or hammer home the main point. Make the conclusion feel earned by the stats you just presented, not just recited because you hit a quota.
That makes sense. It adds a layer of, maybe, sophistication? It lets the argument breathe. So instead of the exact same phrase every single time, you could use variations that tie into the theme of that section.
Exactly. For instance, after the longevity section, instead of just the phrase, maybe something like, the longevity emperor demands a new perspective.
Uh-huh.
Or, after talking about his all-around game, the versatility Voltron transcends era comparison. That is the final argument. Something that uses the section's own power.
Right, using the specific evidence just presented. That gives the audience a second to actually absorb the weight of the 40K points or the 20 All-NBA selections before you hit them with the GOAT assertion again. It feels more logical, less like propaganda, maybe?
Yeah, it maintains the energy but diversifies the delivery. Okay, so if we adjust the rhetoric, the next thing to look at is the overall structure and flow, especially how the cultural argument fits in.
Okay, structure. Yet the piece seems to build pretty logically for the first, 6 parts? You go from the sheer numbers, longevity, versatility, clutch play, rings, records, and then into leadership. That all feels connected.
Right.
But then the final section, cultural colossus, the part about the billion-dollar net worth, Spring Hill, the Oscar nomination, the more than an athlete stuff, it feels a little abrupt, like tacked on.
In that Jordan sold sneakers, LeBron sold freedom line is potentially so powerful, right? It's a key differentiator in the modern era.
Definitely.
But the weakness is structural. If it just feels like a list of business achievements at the end, it loses that punch. There isn't a clear bridge showing how the on-court dominance led to this off-court empire.
That's interesting. I mean, is that connection strictly necessary? Could the argument just be, hey, the GOAT has to dominate everywhere, including business and culture? Does forcing a direct causal link feel a bit strained sometimes?
That's a fair point. But I think the argument here isn't just about wealth. It's framed as influence, as agency, more than an athlete.
Okay.
To really land that cultural colossus point as the ultimate proof, showing how his business and cultural impact grew out of his on-court philosophy, his leadership, that makes the whole narrative stronger, more cohesive.
I see that. So the suggestion is to more explicitly weave the leadership legacy part into the cultural colossus part.
Exactly. Integrate them. Frame his team building, his ability to lift teammates and win across different franchises, as the sort of blueprint for his larger cultural and business moves.
Okay, so you connect the dots, show how building championship teams in Miami, Cleveland, LA, that wasn't just basketball strategy, it was the start of this whole player empowerment era that he now embodies off the court too.
Right. You can use the piece's own examples, turning, quote, scraps into rings with guys like Mo Williams or Delly.
Uh-huh.
Or that Dwayne Wade quote, LeBron made me better. Use those as evidence that his influence was always bigger than just scoring points.
So the concrete step is to reframe that on-court leadership, that ability to build and empower across 3 different teams, as the foundation. His credibility on the court gave him the leverage to build this off-court platform.
Precisely. Then the $1 billion in Spring Hill don't feel like a separate topic. They feel like the natural, almost inevitable result of his entire approach to the game and his career. It makes more than an athlete an earned title, not just a slogan.
Yeah, that definitely tightens up the narrative flow, makes the ending feel much more impactful. Okay.
Good. So that leads us to the third point, which is maybe the most crucial analytical piece. Significance and relevance, really digging into that big, controversial claim.
The 4 rings are better than 6 argument.
Exactly. That LeBron's 4 championships in his era are somehow more significant or tougher than Jordan's 6 in the 90s. This is the core of the confrontational angle, right?
It is, and the material does a decent job listing the tough opponents LeBron faced. You know, the 73-9 Warriors, Durant, the Mavs team that beat him earlier. It establishes that it was a competitive landscape, no doubt.
But
But, yeah, the analysis feels like it leans more on the emotional weight of how hard it felt, rather than digging into the why.
right. It asserts the difficulty. It uses strong rhetoric like claiming Jordan faced hand-picked matchups, but it doesn't fully back that up with the systemic reasons why LeBron's 4 rings might represent a different, maybe even greater challenge compared to winning in a 90s structure. Needs more analytical substance there.
Okay, but let me push back slightly. Isn't there a risk of getting too into the weeds for a YouTube monologue? You start talking collective bargaining agreements and salary cap intricacies. Do you lose the audience that wants the quick, punchy argument?
That's the balancing act for sure. But if your central, most provocative claim is essentially 4-6, you kind of have to provide the why. The burden of proof is higher.
True.
The weakness isn't just asserting it, it's not fully explaining the structural differences between the leagues. You need to show how the modern NBA is fundamentally harder to dominate consistently over time.
Okay, so the suggestion isn't necessarily a deep dive into CBA legalities, but to focus more on articulating those key systemic changes?
Yes. Use the hooks the material already has. Super team wars, the realities of the modern salary cap, the way free agency works now. Use those to explain the organizational challenge.
Right, the sheer difficulty of keeping a championship core together today versus, say, the Bulls dynasty in the 90s.
Exactly. In the 90s, the league structure, the cap rules, less frantic player movement, it arguably made building and sustaining a dynasty like the Bulls more feasible once you had the core pieces. That's not a knock on Jordan or the Bulls, it's about the system they operated in.
Whereas LeBron had to navigate constant change.
He had to essentially build, tear down, and rebuild championship-level teams 3 separate times in 3 different cities across 2 decades. That constant churn, driven by the modern cap and player movement, presents a unique kind of challenge.
So the concrete examples should explicitly connect that idea winning 4 titles with 3 different teams across the 2010s and 2020s directly to the instability baked into the modern league structure.
Yes, you bolster the longevity emperor argument by showing that sustained excellence across 22 seasons in this constantly shifting environment is a form of dominance the 90s dynasty structure just didn't require in the same way.
That adds the analytical weight. It moves the 4 rings crush 6 rings claim from just a hot take into a conclusion supported by structural analysis of the league itself. It shifts the debate from pure ring count to the context and difficulty behind those rings.
Precisely. It makes the argument much harder to dismiss based on just counting championships.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, just to recap the main takeaways for improving this piece. First, it's about managing that core phrase repetition, vary the language, let the stats shine, avoid making it monotonous.
Right. Second, improve the structure by integrating the cultural and leadership arguments more smoothly. Show the off-court empire as a direct result of the on-court philosophy and influence. Don't let it feel like an afterthought.
Uh-huh. And third, really deepen the analysis behind that central 4 rings, 6 rings claim. Move beyond just listing tough opponents and explain the systemic reasons, cap, free agency, roster instability, why dominating the modern era presents unique challenges. Give that claim analytical teeth.
Absolutely. Look, the foundation here is incredibly strong. The stats are killer, the core argument is bold. With these adjustments, refining the rhetoric, tightening the structure, and adding that layer of systemic analysis, this piece can be even more persuasive and really maximize its impact.
Agreed. It's a powerful piece of work already. We definitely encourage you to consider these points, maybe tweak the structure and the rhetorical approach, and feel free to send the revised version back our way. We'd be happy to take another look.
Yeah, thanks for submitting it.